It began on June 25, 2025, when a figure in Arizona sat before a glowing screen, launched Google, and typed 8 fatal words, Nancy Guthrie, address, Catalina, Foothills. That solitary query would ultimately serve as the cornerstone of a damning 8-month digital footprint. It created a path that would lay bare every secret and guide detectives straight to a specific name. The perpetrator had no idea they were building their own cage, because the web remembers everything, and on November 30th, they came back for more. Instead of text, they hunted for visuals this time, downloading photos of the residents to study the layout camera blind spots and ways to get inside. This was digital casing of the joint, and by December 16th, the search terms shifted dramatically. They looked up Savannah Guthrie's earnings, clearly crunching the numbers to determine a ransom price tag. They needed to know exactly how deep the Today Show star's pockets were, and then on January 11th, they made one last check on the location just 3 weeks before Nancy vanished. It was the final confirmation before taking their scheme from the screen to the street leading up to February 1st, 2026. Nancy Guthrie was snatched from her sanctuary in a 41-minute raid that neutralized security systems and left 0 fingerprints behind. The precision proved the attacker had done their homework and knew the environment inside out. For 244 days, an unknown actor plotted this crime, leaving a permanent record of every step in a history file they foolishly thought was private, but they were dead wrong. Nancy Ellen Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of NBC anchor, Savannah Guthrie went missing on February 1st. In 2026, she was taken from her Tucson property in what authorities call one of the most sophisticated abductions on record, leaving only bloodstains on the porch. Her heart monitor was severed from the network at precisely 2:28 in the morning, while the cameras went dark in a specific order during that tight 41-minute time frame. Investigators spent 19 days chasing standard clues, including DNA, from a wayward glove discovered 2 miles from the victim's house. They tracked store receipts for an Ozark trail bag seen on video and analyzed ring footage of a masked figure casing the neighborhood in late January. Then on February 18, 2026, the case cracked wide open when Fox News Digital published a bombshell report that flipped the script. Google Trends unveiled a series of 7 distinct queries regarding Nancy and her daughter, spanning from June 2025 to January 2026. These were focused, escalating efforts to gather intel that started almost a full year before the abduction took place. An individual located in the Tucson region of Arizona had been tirelessly hunting down Nancy's home address. They analyzed photos of the property, estimated the payout based on Savannah's income, and constructed a tactical strategy, one careful step at a time. We're not looking at a random act of violence or a crime born from sudden opportunity. This was cold, calculated espionage by an operator skilled enough in security protocols to bypass alarms and avoid leaving physical prints. Yet they slipped up in one major way by forgetting that Google logs every query with a timestamp, a location tag, and permanent storage. Each search is tied to a specific IP address, and every one of those addresses points back to an internet provider. Those providers keep subscriber logs that connect the digital footprint to a real name and physical house, all of which police can seize with a warrant proving the trail is real. The record is indelible and points a direct finger at the person who dedicated 8 months to orchestrating Nancy Guthrie's abduction. Before we dive into the planning timeline revealed by the search history, the significance of the January 11th date regarding the camera footage and the mechanics of IP tracking. I have a request for you, so please hit that subscribe button and toggle the bell, since this is a rapidly developing story in the Guthrie case. This represents the first solid proof of intent, establishing a clear motive and a digital link to the mastermind behind this operation. We will bring you updates the moment they break, and you will want to be watching when that IP address leads to a suspect and the handcuffs come out. Make sure you are subscribed, because this case has gone from a standstill to full speed ahead. According to Fox News Digital, the search data confirms 7 specific inquiries regarding the victim were made between June 2025 and January 2026. These were not the idle clicks of a fan interested in a celebrity's parent, but rather a distinct pattern showing deliberate escalation. The goal is obvious, as someone local to the Tucson area was compiling a dossier and preparing to strike. The timeline exposes a strategy typical of someone treating this kidnapping like a military operation or a police raid. It unfolded in distinct stages, moving from information collection and visual study to financial assessment and on-the-ground stalking before the final act. Between June 21st and June 28th, 2025, the first search for the Catalina Foothills address was logged. Data from Google confirms this query originated right there within the state of Arizona. They did not just type a generic name or look for the mother of a famous news anchor. It was a precise hunt for a house number in a specific community, aiming to pinpoint one individual 8 months prior to the crime. An 8-month window eliminates impulse or sudden choices, proving this was a long-term project starting with target acquisition. The perpetrator selected Nancy as their mark and immediately started digging into her location. The detail is crucial because they ignored general biographies or trivia about the Guthrie family to focus solely on logistics. They were hunting for an address and coordinates with a clear lethal intent from the very start. From November 30th through December 1st, 2025, they scoured Google Images for Nancy's address in Arizona. Fox News highlights that this specific query was hunting for visual layouts or maps of the residence. 2 months prior to Nancy vanishing, an individual was sharpening their plan and memorizing the property lines, pinpointing security cameras visible in photos, mapping sight lines, and plotting how to get in and out. Searching for images has a darker motive than searching for text. Text gives a location. Images reveal the fortress. You see the neighbors, the street view, the architecture, and the alarms. This is visual reconnaissance. Someone was casing the target remotely before they ever drove by in person. They needed to see the structure, find the weak spots, and learn the ground. That level of homework is far beyond typical criminal behavior. This isn't a thug acting on impulse, or grabbing an opportunity. This is tactical planning by someone trained in surveillance and target analysis. December 13th through 20th, 2025. A totally different search appeared. Savannah Guthrie salary. Searched from Tucson, not Phoenix, not Scottsdale. Tucson, the very city where Nancy resides. This search exposes the motive with chilling clarity. Financial reconnaissance. They needed to know Savannah Guthrie's income to calculate the ransom. They were assessing the family's ability to pay. They had to find a price point high enough to matter, but realistic enough to actually get paid, and Fox News noted how this compares to searches for other anchors. A query for Anderson Cooper came from New York. Sean Hannity was searched from New York, but Savannah Guthrie's pay was searched from Tucson, the same town where her mother lives and where this person had been hunting for the address for 6 months. That geography is no accident. December is 6 weeks before Nancy disappeared. They were researching the motive in the final prep phase. Several ransom notes were sent to the media after she vanished, demanding around $6 million. Police haven't confirmed if any of them were real, but that sum fits the profile of someone who looked up a host's salary and asked for what they thought the family could afford based on her annual pay. Someone did the math. Someone calculated that the mom of a rich TV anchor was a ticket to a massive payday. Someone ran a cost-benefit analysis and decided the job was worth the risk. This wasn't emotional. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was a financial crime. A cold calculation of return on investment. On January 11th, 2026, the address was searched again. This matters because of the timing. That date is exactly 3 weeks before she vanished. 3 weeks signals the final countdown. And this date keeps appearing in the investigation, revealing exactly what the detectives think went down. The sheriff explicitly asked the public to check their Ring cameras for footage from January 11th. Police know something went down on January 11th, something major that bridges digital spying with physical stalking. January 11th was a Saturday. It was the last confirmation search before the physical recon started. They researched the address in June, studied photos in November, and checked the money in December. Now in January, 3 weeks out from the hit, they searched the home one last time, confirming the spot, verifying their intel, and getting ready to move from a screen to the street. The sheriff's request for Ring video from that day tells us their theory. They believe the suspect drove past Nancy's house that day, regular car daylight. No mask, nothing weird. Just a driver rolling through the neighborhood, slowing down as they passed that specific house. Maybe snapping photos from the car, doing what pros call a drive-by reconnaissance. That car could be on a neighbor's camera. Detectives want to find any vehicle that slowed near her place on January 11th. Because if video shows the car this guy was driving, they have a link. Digital spying on the 11th connects to the drive-by on the 11th, which links to night recon later, and finally to the crime on February 1st. Watch how they build this case. They know from Google that the address was looked up on January 11th. They suspect a drive-by happened that same day. If they identify a car on camera, they can track it everywhere else. License plate readers all over Tucson snap every car that passes. Those readers build a time-stamped record of everywhere that vehicle traveled. Should that car have driven past an automated reader on Wade Road just outside the victim's enclave on January 11th, that momentary blip is now locked in a police server, preserving the exact time-date coordinates and heading forever. Furthermore, once they tag a specific car from that daylight visit, detectives can cross-reference it against the shadowy figures recorded during the nocturnal prowling from the 20th to the 29th. Several home security systems picked up a disguised stranger throughout. That 10-day window testing door handles sifting through post and creeping across lawns from midnight until 2 in the morning. Even while the lens tracked the intruder, the background often revealed cars sitting quietly in driveways or on the street, and linking a ride spotted in broad daylight on the 11th to one lurking in the dark. Weeks later forms an unbreakable chain of proof. There is another layer to this puzzle involving a specific alert circulating on the neighborhood watch network regarding that same day. A local resident evidently uploaded a warning to the community platform concerning events from the 11th. A police captain actually jumped into the thread instructing locals to prioritize official updates when sending in their leads. It implies that a sharp-eyed neighbor clocked something shady on the 11th and immediately broadcasted it to the group. In all likelihood, the message detailed a strange car, an unknown drifter, or weird behavior that just did not sit right. Detectives are banking on other residents reviewing their own archives from that date to catch the same anomaly from a fresh vantage point. Different lenses, varied angles, but the exact same machine operating within that identical window of time. This is the blueprint for a prosecution so tight, it leaves no room for doubt. The timeline has crystallized perfectly. June was the start locating the victim. By November and December, the focus shifted to virtual casing, scouring the web for photos of the layout. Then came the financial deep dive in December, followed by the first eyes on trip on January 11th, and finally the dark hours between the 20th and 29th when cameras caught the prowler. Everything culminated on February 1st. In that crucial lead-up week, security videos across the block showed our masked ghost trying handles, rifling through personal correspondence, and cutting across private property in the dead of night. This was the dress rehearsal meant to clock police response and learn the rhythm of the street, spotting the blind spots in surveillance, gauging who stays up late, and figuring out which houses were soft targets. It all paved the way for the 1st of February when the feeds went black, one by one, and the victim vanished in a 41-minute window that screamed of inside knowledge. Every single step was a building block for the next move. Looking up the address pinpointed the map while the image hunt revealed the terrain. Checking the income set the financial stakes, and that drive-by on the 11th verified everything the screen had promised. The late-night creeping validated the escape routes, setting the stage for the final act, which utilized every scrap of stolen data. Yet the true nail in the coffin comes from those innocent-looking browser queries because they leave a trail. Each query is stamped with an IP label, a digital coordinate that pinpoints the exact machine and its physical location at that specific second. Think of these strings of numbers as DNA left at a crime scene. The moment a device goes online, the service provider tags it with a unique identifier. This tag gets recorded with a time and linked to a bill payer, meaning the search engine captures the query, the moment, and the user identity all at once. That information sits in a vault forever, waiting for a judge to sign the paper that releases it to the police. After detectives secure that number, connecting the dots becomes a matter of basic procedure. Police serve a subpoena to the tech giant asking for the records. The compliance department retrieves the history, matching the requested keywords and dates. For this investigation, they are looking for queries regarding the victim's home and income made from June 2025 to January 2026. The results will list every single attempt to find that info paired with the originating network address. Investigators then carry those numbers to the local broadband companies in the region like Cox or CenturyLink, or Comcast, since every provider keeps a strict ledger of who is using what address at any given second. They need these records to manage the grid and send out monthly bills. The archives are permanent, so when officers show up with a court order, the company runs a quick search for the match. Their computers immediately spit out the account holder, active during that exact sliver of time. This file reveals the customer's full name, where they send the invoice, how they pay, and when they signed up, effectively handing over the suspect on a silver platter. If every single one of those 7 queries traces back to one solitary connection, it creates a direct and unbreakable chain of custody linking the individual who hunted for the New York address in June to the one who looked up the paycheck in December. We are looking at the identical device, the exact same coordinates, and a singular entity conducting an 8-month stakeout. Every digital footprint leads straight to a brick-and-mortar doorstep. Inside that house lives a resident. And just like that, the resident transforms into our primary target. Even if they tried to be clever by hopping between different networks, every single connection leaves a breadcrumb trail that can be followed back to the source. If our target utilized their home broadband for some inquiries and switched to a smartphone for others, the billing records will inevitably tie both connections to a solitary subscriber identity. Major cellular providers keep archives just as rigorous and invasive as any home internet service provider would. Tower pings pinpoint exactly where that device was standing when the queries were typed. If they thought a coffee shop offered anonymity, the security cameras overhead were likely recording their face at the exact second they hit enter. Even those private networks designed for secrecy keep connection diaries that authorities can demand, revealing precisely which user was tunneling through at any given moment. The reality that this digital activity radiated from Arizona and explicitly from the Tucson region shrinks our haystack down to a very manageable size. We are looking at local homework done by a neighbor living in the very same geographical footprint as Nancy herself. This is an individual who could cruise past her driveway a dozen times without anyone batting an eye. We are hunting someone orchestrating a mission that demanded boots on the ground. This isn't some idle internet troll sitting on the other side of the map with a passing curiosity. This was a local operative managing a long-game timeline. Now we have to address the psychology of the perpetrator. Specifically, who invests 8 months into plotting a kidnapping, What breed of human possesses the restraint, the rigid focus, and the tactical mentality required to maintain a reconnaissance mission for 244 days? On a recent broadcast, profiling specialist John Kelly noted that these specific queries are the textbook definition of predatory pregame behavior seen in calculated abductions. The build-up to the crime inevitably involves this specific category of digital stalking. If there is anybody out there who knows this individual and suspects their hard drive holds these secrets or browser history, that is exactly who investigators need to interview immediately. The hotline needs to be ringing off the hook. Police are blasting these search details to the public in the hopes that a citizen spots the behavioral design. We need the person who knows a guy that was fixated on Nancy Guthrie last year. We need the witness who saw someone acting paranoid around their laptop. Think back to weird inquiries about the family or a bizarre fascination with exactly how much money Savannah makes. That witness has a moral duty to pick up the phone, drop a name, allow the detectives to run that identity against the geolocation logs seized from the search engine. Grasping the psychological makeup of the suspect clarifies exactly who the task force is hunting for. An operator who dedicates 8 months to gathering intel shows a terrifying level of patience. The vast majority of felons act on a whim with almost zero foresight. A timeline this stretched out points to a personality capable of serious delayed gratification. They can lock onto a distant objective and suppress the urge to strike too early. That kind of waiting game is incredibly uncommon in the criminal underworld. It hints at a character defined by regimented discipline, iron self-control, and the capacity for strategic long-range planning. This suspect demonstrates a highly structured mind. The evolution from finding an address to hunting for photos, then checking income, and finally doing physical recon follows a cold logic. Every move acts as a foundation for the next. Each search yields the data required for the subsequent phase. This isn't someone randomly clicking around the internet. This is methodical espionage adhering to a strict operational script. It is as if they drafted a checklist of necessary intelligence and slowly ticked off the boxes over 8 months. The drive for money is undeniable here. Hunting for salary details proves this was a business decision fueled by the assumption that Savannah's bank account turned Nancy into a high-value asset. Somebody sat down and crunched the numbers. Someone estimated that the parent of a rich news anchor could leverage a massive cash payout. An individual ran a risk assessment and decided the potential reward outweighed the danger. That chilly logic reveals a mind focused on return on investment, rather than passion or chaotic impulse. The local connection is locked in. Every single digital query came out of Arizona with the financial research pinpointed specifically to Tucson. This phantom resides or works right there in the zone. They have a routine reason to be there, enabling them to watch the target without raising a single red flag. They can roll through Nancy's subdivision without triggering a neighbor's instinct that something is wrong. They fade into the background scenery. This isn't a hitman flying in from another state. This is a local who has deep roots and a valid reason to exist in that community. It is someone who knows the streets, reads the neighborhood rhythms, and navigates the area invisibly. The mix of tactical skill and digital ignorance paints a compelling picture. They were smart enough to engineer a complex abduction and neutralize cameras, yet not smart enough to mask their online footprints. That specific contradiction points toward a very particular vocational history. It screams of military drills where they learned field tactics but never touched a class on cybersecurity or digital hygiene. It suggests a law enforcement background where they learned how to tail a suspect but never grasped how internet forensics actually works. Maybe it is a self-taught amateur who read the books but missed the chapters on electronic tracking. A veteran of the armed forces or the police would inherently understand the value of recon. They would know that pre-game planning is non-negotiable. They would possess the training for staking out a target and maintaining security during the physical act. However, they likely lack the specialized training needed for digital forensics masking, IP addresses, or maintaining internet anonymity. This flaw creates a massive gap in their defense, where they might be brilliant at staying hidden physically, but they are incredibly sloppy with their online security, and that single weakness is going to be their downfall. These traits build a profile that detectives can exploit. Which individual in the Tucson region possesses the discipline required for such a long-term scheme? Who has the logistical mind to pull off a job this complex? Who is driven by a desperate need for money to hunt a rich family who lives close enough to watch them every day? Who has the tactical skills to execute the plan but remains completely blind to their digital footprint? When you match this behavioral profile against the hard physical evidence, the list of suspects shrinks rapidly. Who bought that specific Ozark trail bag at Walmart during the window in question? Who has a beard that looks exactly like the one on the doorbell video? Who owns the car that kept appearing on camera while casing the house at night? Once you mix the psychology with the physical clues and the cyber trail, the pool of possible perpetrators drops from a city of 500,000 down to just a handful of names, maybe a few dozen at most. And once that internet address points to a real name, the profile serves as the final check to confirm this person matches the type of criminal they were looking for. Retired federal agent Lou Will called this data a goldmine for the prosecution. This represents the sophisticated scouting phase of the crime. Experts will work backward from the internet connection, allowing Google to link those queries to the user's broader history to reveal everything else they looked at, uncovering every other search tied to that data stream from the year 2025 all the way up to the day the incident went down. This backward tracing allows the investigative team to comb through the entire browsing log linked to the locations where those incriminating searches originated. What other topics did this individual explore? Did they try to find instructions on how to knock out a Nest security system? Did they hunt for details on how pacemaker frequencies work? Did they check which local stores had those specific backpacks in stock? Were they typing in questions about how to keep their prints off a scene, or the best methods for bypassing motion detectors, or how to figure out the right amount to ask for in a payoff? Every single query logged from that connection is laid bare once a judge signs the warrant. The reach of this forensic analysis is total. It exposes the full browser log to reveal every single web page the suspect ever clicked on. It shows the videos they streamed, which highlight their obsessions. It reveals the discussion boards they read and any items they bought online while using that same connection. It tracks every file or program they downloaded to their drive. It exposes all their correspondence if they were logging into a web-based mail service. Literally every piece of data that machine touched on the web gets swept up and added to the growing pile of evidence against them. This deep dive into the data uncovers links that detectives might never see otherwise. The perpetrator might have scouted other victims before settling on Nancy. Those inquiries are going to show up in the logs. They might have studied past abductions to learn what works. Those records are permanent. They might have chatted on message boards about how to plan a heist or dodge cameras. Those comments are out there, waiting to be found. It is possible they looked up details on rich news presenters before they finally decided to zero in on Savannah Guthrie. They could have been checking out other staff at the network. They might have hunted for the private residences of famous people living around the city. All of these actions form a clear pattern that proves this was not just casual curiosity, but a calculated method of choosing a victim. They might have even searched for how many days a person can stay alive if they are cut off from their necessary prescriptions. Perhaps they checked what drugs older people need to survive. They might have scouted for isolated spots where they could hide a hostage without being seen. They may have read up on how to demand payment in cryptocurrency, or how to set up secret lines of contact that cannot be traced. Each one of these queries, assuming they are in the log, serves as another brick in the wall, proving they planned this with malicious intent. The web logs also betray their habits by showing exactly when they were active. What time of day do they usually sit down at the keyboard? Do their late-night browsing sessions match up with the creepy surveillance footage caught on the doorbell cams between 12 and 2 o'clock? If they were looking up locations between midnight and 2 in the morning, while a masked figure was filmed nearby at that exact time, that timing link makes the case airtight. The hardware details matter too. We need to know if the individual was sitting at a desktop or using a smartphone to conduct their digital scouting. If they were on a mobile device, the pings from the cell towers will pinpoint exactly where that phone was standing when the searches were made. If the queries originated from Tucson and the carrier logs place the handset there at that specific moment, it proves beyond doubt they were in the area. Should the tracking data place the phone near Nancy's neighborhood on January 11th, right when they looked up the address, that ties the online spying directly to the real-world stalking on the very same day. This is the moment the investigation gains unstoppable speed. The search history proves they spent 8 months plotting this out. Genetic material on the glove puts them right at the crime scene. The store receipts prove they bought the necessary gear. Security footage reveals their stalking habits. When all these lines of proof point to the same person found via the web address, a guilty verdict is all but guaranteed. Just think about how this layering of evidence actually plays out in the real world. The digital breadcrumbs from those Google searches finally hit a solid target, revealing a specific subscriber. Detectives now hold the identity and physical location of the individual who relentlessly stalked NY's address and Savannah's income for the last 8 months. That name triggers a massive forensic deep dive, pulling everything from rap sheets and work history to inner circles and bank statements. Next comes the subpoena for financial data specifically hunting for transactions that align with the timeline of plotting this abduction. A hit pops up on this statement from Walmart dated December 15th. It pinpoints a buy at a Tucson store where the receipt total and timestamp line up perfectly with the sale of an Ozark Trail backpack. 5 days later, on December 20th, the cards show activity at a local sporting goods retailer. The price tag matches a specific gun holster in the inventory logs, marking the first major point of convergence. At the same time, the team secures a broader warrant to seize the suspect's entire web browsing history, going far deeper than just search queries. The internet provider hands over the logs, revealing YouTube viewing habits focused on disabling home security cameras. Reddit activity uncovers threads where the user asked about dodging police tails and staying off the grid. Amazon order history confirms the delivery of manuals dedicated to spying and counter-surveillance tactics. Every click paints a portrait of a predator meticulously learning how to stage an attack identical to the one on NY, establishing the second point of convergence. Investigators circle back to the Ring camera video from January 11th, scanning specifically for car traffic this time. At 2:15 in the afternoon, a car is seen creeping past the house with the license plate partially caught in the frame. Digital enhancement sharpens the tag number which runs through the DMV to reveal the car belongs to the exact same person identified by the IP address. This is convergence point 3. The digital stalker physically drove by the target's home on the very day they searched for it online. The team re-examines the nighttime surveillance clips recorded between January 20th and the 29th with a fresh perspective. Even with the lens focused on the masked prowler background analysis, reveals parked cars lurking in the distance. One specific video from 1:30 in the morning on January 23rd captures a car parked 3 doors down that matches the suspect's make and model. Convergence point 4 is locked in as the suspect's registered vehicle places them at the scene during the critical scouting phase. The final nail in this coffin is the DNA evidence prompting a targeted surveillance operation to collect a sample. The target grabs a drink at a coffee shop, lingers outside to finish it, and tosses the empty cup into a public bin. Moments after the subject departs, an agent secures the trash, bagging the cup for immediate transport to the crime lab. Technicians isolate a genetic profile from saliva on the lid and run it against the sample taken from the glove, discovered 2 miles from the victim's house. It is a perfect match, sealing convergence point 5. The suspect's genetic material was inside the glove left at the crime scene. The circle is now fully closed with the search history demonstrating 8 months of premeditated intent. Financial records confirm the purchase of tools while vehicle registration places the suspect at the location during the planning stages. Biology confirms they were there during the crime, turning what might be isolated coincidences into undeniable facts. Combine these factors forge an ironclad narrative that leaves no room for doubt, presenting a nightmare scenario for any defense lawyer. There is simply no way to spin this to a jury when the client was searching the address in June and studying property layouts in November. They looked up the daughter's income in December and went back to checking the home address in January. They bought the specific gear seen on camera in December and physically surveilled the house on January 11th. With their car spotting during the final scout in late January and their DNA found after the February 1st abduction, no logical alibi can survive. It creates a void where no excuse exists, making the Walmart tracking data even more damning alongside the search timeline. The perpetrator realized they needed that backpack and holster between December and January to effectively hide their weapons and gear. Sales logs from Walmart track every single 25-liter Ozark trail bag sold across the entire state of Arizona during that window. These digital receipts capture the exact store, the precise minute, and the method used to pay. If a card was swiped and the name matches our internet subscriber, the case effectively closes itself right there. Even if they paid with cash, the store's security grid captures the face of whoever made the buy. Cameras are angled at every register specifically to log a clear view of each customer's face. Cash does not make you invisible because facial recognition software runs those security stills against state driver's license databases. A match with the Google search suspect creates absolute certainty, which is why Sheriff Nano has teams sweeping Tucson gun stores for the holster buyer. Specialty shops like that tend to notice when customers make odd pairing choices. Someone buying a high-end firearm but pairing it with the cheapest holster on the rack sticks out in a clerk's mind. Staff recall these interactions, so when the FBI flashes a photo, the memory triggers a check of the logs and the name is revealed. If the name on the account lines up with the subscriber behind that IP address, we have got ourselves a solid lock. Then you look at that ring poking through the glove on the doorbell cam, and it gives us another massive point of comparison. Say the guy we track it down via the digital trail happens to sport a very specific piece of jewelry. That tiny detail turns into the smoking gun that bridges the gap between his online footprint and his real-world identity. You have surveillance shots showing a band on his finger, while the enhanced video clearly reveals the outline of a ring right through his glove. It is a confirmed physical match, proving the man found through cyber forensics is the exact same figure caught on camera. Hold on a second though, because we need to take a breath here. Anyone tracking Nancy's case from day one knows just how many brick walls we have hit, including DNA, that triggered 0 hits in the database. We are talking about 19 million profiles scanned with absolutely nothing to show for it, plus ransom letters that were total duds. Days bled into weeks without a single answer, no suspects on the radar, and not one pair of handcuffs brought out. Yet this breakthrough with the Google Trends data flips the entire script. This is the massive lead that detectives have been praying for. It is the kind of evidence that shifts a frozen case into high gear and drives it straight toward a courtroom showdown. Make sure you hit subscribe and ring that bell. Because the second that digital trail spits out a real name and the judge signs off on that warrant, when they finally slap the cuffs on him, you are going to want to be right here watching. We will have the full story the instant it drops, so do not sleep on this. Press that button right now. For Savannah Guthrie and her loved ones, these search queries represent something far darker than just cold, hard facts. They signify a terrifying invasion of privacy that hits you right in the gut. Just picture finding this out while you were sitting around the Christmas tree with your mom. A stranger was actually crunching numbers to figure out how much she was worth based on your paycheck, while you were live on television beaming at millions of people reading the headlines and chatting with guests. A predator was analyzing photos of her house and plotting exactly how to snatch her away. While you were tucking your little ones in for the night, reading them fairy tales and giving them a kiss on the forehead, someone out there was putting the finishing touches on a scheme to rip your mother away from her family. 8 long months. 244 days of being under a microscope. 244 days where every second of peace was just a lie because a monster right in your hometown had already sealed your mom's destiny. He was watching and he was scheming. This individual looked up Savannah's income and Nancy's home address with cold, hard precision. The shattering of privacy, the stalking, and the icy financial math behind that salary search all add a layer of horror that goes way deeper than the disappearance alone. The keywords were incredibly precise. He typed in Savannah Guthrie's salary explicitly, not just general queries about Today Show paychecks or NBC anchor wages. This person wanted data on her, directly hunted her mother directly, and did it all because of her directly. Looking at the two timelines side by side is enough to make your skin crawl. While the family went about their daily business from June to February, a predator was plotting. Back in July, when Savannah was greeting viewers on the Today Show, this guy had already marked Nancy as his prey. As the family came together to carve the turkey at Thanksgiving, an unseen enemy was poring over satellite views of Nancy's estate. While they were unwrapping gifts at Christmas, a criminal was doing the math on a ransom note based on Savannah's yearly earnings. Finding out that a stranger spent 8 months dissecting your family's life before making a move completely rewrites the story of this tragedy. This was never some random act of violence that could have befallen just any passerby. This was not a crime of opportunity where your mom just happened to be in the wrong spot at a bad moment. It was focused, engineered, and intentional. Your entire clan was analyzed under glass. Your mother was handpicked as the weak link in the chain. Your bank account was scrutinized to set a price tag. Your own hard-earned success was turned into a weapon against the person you cherish above all else. Knowing that 8 months of stalking happened while you were just living your life creates a heavy psychological weight that is almost impossible to describe. You have to wonder how often you walked right past him in the supermarket aisle. How many times were you sitting in the exact same diner, walking the same streets, or sharing the same park, completely oblivious to the fact that eyes were on you? Calculating every move, her career triumph was twisted into a dagger pointed straight at her family. A criminal decided that a Today Show star makes enough cash to pay a massive fee for her mother's life. He stripped down her career milestones, her decades of grind, and her professional heights, reducing them all to a simple number on a ransom sheet. Her fame painted a target on her family's back. Her victory created a dangerous opening for her mother. That direct link, no matter how unjust or illogical it feels, sparks a complicated knot of emotions that goes way past simple mourning. There is guilt, even though Savannah did absolutely nothing wrong, and a burning rage at the unfairness of it all, terror for the rest of the clan, and doubts about whether the job that gave her so much joy also delivered this horror. For her brother and sister Cameron and Annie, the situation is just as messy. Their mom was hunted down solely due to their sister's fame because Savannah reached a level of success that screamed wealth to an outsider. The cold hard truth is that the link between Savannah's public spotlight and Nancy's private life is exactly what allowed this to happen. That fact ripples through the family bond in ways that will linger long after this immediate crisis fades away. That Tucson connection cuts deep, adding a raw emotional weight that makes the trauma even harder to bear. The digital breadcrumbs didn't lead to New York, where Savannah built her career. They didn't point to Los Angeles, the hub of the entertainment world, but right back to Tucson, where Nancy lives a quiet life, where she spent decades putting down roots and raising her babies. A local operator dug up the daughter's salary info to compute exactly how much ransom they could squeeze out of the mother. Someone embedded in her own community studied her weak points. We are talking about a person who walks the same streets, maybe lives just a block away, or picks up milk at the exact same market. They could be brushing past you on the sidewalk without raising a single red flag. That kind of proximity turns a crime into a deeply intimate betrayal that hurts on a whole new level. This isn't some faceless predator from 1,000 miles away, but a neighbor who calls this place home. It is the person standing right behind you while you wait to pay for your groceries. It could be the driver offering a friendly wave as they cruise down your street. Yet discovering these search queries signifies something far more critical than just geography. There is real hope here. Digital footprints are basically immortal. Those internet protocol addresses forge an unbreakable chain of evidence that is impossible to wipe clean. Data from Google locks in precise times and exact physical locations means that nobody can go back and change. Whoever sat at that keyboard created a permanent signature that is going to give them away. The fact that detectives are blasting this all over the news shows they are incredibly confident. Authorities would never drop a card like this on the table unless they knew it was going to push the case forward in a major way. They either have the digital address and need a tip to match it to a face, or they already know who did it and are stacking up every piece of proof before slapping on the cuffs. Letting the public in on this secret implies the case is no longer cold, but heating up fast. Choosing to leak these details specifically through a major outlet like Fox News is a deliberate tactical maneuver. Police had every right to keep those search logs under wraps while they chased down the digital trail with sealed court orders. Yet they decided to broadcast it to the world. That choice opens up several powerful advantages for the prosecution. Number one, media coverage shakes the tree for information. A witness who knows someone acting like this might not have realized the significance until seeing it on screen. Maybe a buddy saw some weird browsing history last year but shrugged it off at the time. A colleague might have heard odd questions about the Guthrie clan and ignored them. Or a relative spotted shady web searches but rationalized them away. Suddenly, those dormant memories snap into focus. Random observations finally have a terrifying context. Witnesses pick up the phone offering names that detectives can instantly check against the digital coordinates they got from Google. Number two, going public puts a massive psychological squeeze on the perpetrator. The individual behind the keyboard thought their online snooping was a secret that would never see the light of day. They were meticulous in the physical world, wearing masks and gloves, while making sure to cut the cameras and leave zero fingerprints behind. They probably felt like geniuses about their operational security. Then they wake up to find 8 months of digital plotting splashed across national television. That kind of shock generates unbearable tension, and tension is exactly what makes people screw up. A panicked suspect might scramble to wipe the search logs from their phone or laptop, but the act of erasing data is incriminating in itself. Digital forensic experts can pull those files back from the dead even after the hard drive has been scrubbed. Trying to hide the history proves consciousness of guilt. There is no reason to purge those records unless you know they point straight to a crime. That purge confirms the suspect knew exactly how their online habits were linked to Nancy's disappearance. The target might panic and reach out to warn their partners in crime that the heat is on. Every one of those messages just builds the pile of evidence higher. We are talking call logs, text threads, and even encrypted chats that investigators can crack open with the right court orders. Any communication that happens right after this news breaks creates a direct line connecting new players to the conspiracy. The perpetrator might try to run, but flight is practically a confession and comes with its own nightmare logistics. Where can you possibly hide when your digital address is already flagged? How do you get your hands on cash without leaving a breadcrumb trail? How do you move around without tripping a sensor? Taking off actually makes it easier for the police to zero in on you. Detectives can alert the Federal Bureau of Investigation and U.S. Marshals that their main target is in the wind. Suddenly, all resources converge on one person instead of chasing shadows. Border agents get this red flag. Airport security gets the photo. Every swipe of a credit card sends up a flare. Cell towers ping the location instantly. Trying to bolt usually ends in handcuffs faster than if they had just stayed home and acted normal. Number three, the media blast serves notice to any accomplices that the detectives are making serious headway. If a crew planned this job together, seeing those search terms on the news might push one of them to flip before the others get the chance. That $200,000 bounty looks a lot sweeter when you realize the law is breathing down your neck regardless. It makes sense to talk, grab the cash and cut a deal for less time, rather than waiting for your buddies to sell you out. The first canary to sing gets the check, and the leniency. That dynamic starts a frantic race among the conspirators to dial the police. In a race like that, someone always cracks under the pressure. The clock on this investigation just started ticking a whole lot faster. Just yesterday, it looked like we had hit a brick wall. That DNA on the glove did not belong to CODIS. We scanned 19 million genetic profiles and came up empty. Running a full genealogy trace was going to burn weeks or maybe months. With 0 names released and nobody in handcuffs, time was slipping away. Then this morning, the entire landscape shifted. A fresh trail of digital crumbs just blew this investigation wide open. We are talking about 8 months of web history and trackable connections that could identify our guy in days rather than months. To the 400 agents grinding on this file, that search data is the golden ticket they needed. The next move is getting Google's legal team on the phone. They need to subpoena those connection logs immediately. Then they hit up the internet providers in Arizona to match those digital footprints to real names. Once they have a target, they dig into their past. That leads to raiding houses, seizing cars, and grabbing every laptop in sight. They will swab for genetic matches and stack the evidence brick by brick. This entire process can be wrapped up in a matter of days. For Nancy, sitting somewhere out there on day 19, this break is a lifeline. A probe that looked dead in the water is now moving at light speed. Whoever did this spent 8 months plotting, but dropped breadcrumbs leading right to their front door. That perpetrator has to be feeling the heat right about now. They were so careful with their prep work and totally methodical in their execution, covering their tracks at the scene, wearing full gear and shutting down the surveillance feeds, keeping their prints off the door handles, but they missed one massive detail. The web never forgets a single click. Thinking their online snooping was private was a fatal error. Police now possess a detailed blueprint of the crime drafted by the criminal's own keyboard. Each move is logged, every stage has a time marker, and every query is pinned to a location. Imagine a state attorney laying this chronology out for the court. June is when they first looked up the location and picked their mark. By November, they were pulling satellite views to scope out the lay of the land. Come December, they checked income levels to figure out the payout. January saw one last check on the house before they started watching it in person. Then in February, Nancy vanishes within a tight 41-minute window. That is 8 months of intent projected on a monitor for a dozen peers to judge. 8 months establishes absolute malice aforethought. It proves this was never a snap decision, a mishap, or some confusing mix-up. Any lawyer trying to defend this is going to have a nightmare on their hands. How do you justify looking up that specific house back in June? What is the excuse for downloading property photos in November? Why dig into Savannah's finances in December or recheck the location in January using your own home internet connection? How does that explain the perfect match with the security footage logs? Once biological proof puts them on site, the game is over. There is no valid alibi here, and the court will see that clear as day. We are looking at 8 months of hard evidence, not a heat-of-the-moment mistake. This was a cold, systematic, engineered plot starting with a victim choice and ending with snatching an 84-year-old lady. 8 months is an eternity to rethink your life choices. Plenty of time to weigh the fallout, time to pick a better road, time to just walk away. This individual had 244 days to pull the plug. That is 244 chances to do the right thing, and they ignored every single one. That decision will crush them when the judge reads the sentence. Abduction charges come with hard time, and planning it out only makes it worse. It acts as an accelerator. Plotting for 8 months shows the court they were fully committed to breaking the law. That long stretch also opens the door for slip-ups. Maybe they dropped a hint to a buddy who is starting to connect the dots. Perhaps they left a laptop open and a relative caught a glimpse of their browsing habits. They might have seemed jittery or distant while prepping, or colleagues might have seen them buying weird gear. Those observers are out there in Tucson right now. The news coverage could jog their memories and prompt them to speak up. That information needs to get to the police. There is definitely a person who knows the source of those queries. Someone is living or working right next to the machine used to stalk the victim. A peer likely saw a fixation on Savannah Guthrie months ago. Maybe they spotted something odd on a communal screen. Somebody heard weird inquiries regarding that family. That witness has the power to dial the hotline this very second. All they have to do is whisper a name. Investigators will cross-reference it with the digital logs from the tech giant. Once those two data points collide the tip and the server logs, it is game over. The process moves lightning fast from ID to handcuffs. The individual who looked up that address on June 25, 2025 is going down. The search giant keeps those connection numbers forever. The internet provider has the billing name attached to that number. The authorities are on their way with the paperwork. It is not a maybe anymore. It is just a matter of time. 8 months of scheming captured in a history file the criminal built with their own hands, thinking no one was watching. Without realizing it, they were essentially drafting their own indictment. Each query typed every link, clicked every photo, loaded, was being etched into digital stone stamped with a precise time and pinned to a physical location, creating a trail that guides detectives straight to their real name. Nancy Guthrie has been vanished for 19 agonizing days. Her loved ones have been frantically hunting for answers for 19 days, yet an invisible figure dedicated 244 days, to plotting this nightmare. From June 25th to February 1st, 244 days of study, 244 days of stalking, 244 days of manufacturing proof. Now, every second of those 244 days is under the microscope of police holding the keys to the search engine vaults, internet provider histories, and the court orders needed to seize every byte of electronic data that survives. The perpetrator made a fatal error by leaving two distinct trails. There is the tangible debris left at the crime scene. Then there is the digital footprint online. Tangible items can be scrubbed, tossed out, burned up, or buried deep. But cyber tracks are forever. They cannot be wiped from the massive server farms. They cannot be bleached from the provider logs. They cannot be purged from the archives that authorities unlock with a judge's signature. They do not decay. They do not vanish. It is this electronic paper trail that will unmask the villain. That name will spark a raid. That raid will end in handcuffs. Those handcuffs trigger a trial. And that trial ensures a guilty verdict and retribution. For Nancy Guthrie, for her kin, And for Savannah Annie and Cameron, who have survived 19 days of pure hell, for the 400 detectives grinding through shifts day and night to crack this code, and for the nearly 40,000 souls who sent in leads because they know Nancy belongs at home. These browser histories are the breakthrough we waited for. Just yesterday, the case seemed to hit a wall. Today, it picked up speed. By tomorrow, we will have a name. Shortly after comes the capture, then the charges, and finally the judgment. Vindication for an 84-year-old lady stalked for 8 months by a wolf she never saw coming. Vindication for a household that lived through those same 8 months of silent observation, never guessing that a threat was creeping up on them. Retribution brought about by the very clues the villain generated. Data they foolishly thought was just private browsing. Data that was in fact building an everlasting, trackable, irrefutable log of a premeditated crime, a log that is currently guiding police straight to their doorstep. The web has a perfect memory, and so do we. If this story has struck a chord with you, if you feel Nancy Guthrie has owed her day in court, if you want to watch this manhunt cross the finish line, hit that subscribe button right now. Enable your alerts, because the moment that digital address is pinned down, the second that identity is confirmed and the suspect is in custody, we will cover every beat of the action. It is far from finished. It is only starting. As for the individual behind those queries who dedicated 8 months to the scheme, thinking they were a ghost, the warning is simple. Your cyber footprints are real. Your connection point is recorded, your identity is buried in those files, and the authorities are closing in. The eternal echo of justice. A lesson in vigilance. Imagine the warmth of a holiday dinner, the laughter of a mother, and the quiet peace of a life well lived. While the Guthrie family was busy making memories, a shadow was busy making calculations. For 244 days, 8 long months of birthdays and sunrises, an invisible predator was dismantling their privacy, turning a daughter's hard-earned success into a lethal target. He didn't see a beloved 84-year-old woman. He saw a mathematical equation for profit. This chilling saga serves as a profound wake-up call for our modern age. It reminds us that while we navigate our daily routines, the digital footprints we leave are etched in an eternal, unbreakable stone. But more importantly, it is a testament to the inevitable triumph of truth. The very technology used to engineer a nightmare became the inescapable cage for the monster. Let this be our lesson. Privacy is a sanctuary we must guard, and human life is a treasure that no ransom can ever quantify. Cherish your loved ones fiercely today, for vigilance is the silent guardian of peace. Remember, a mask may hide a face, but it can Baugio erase the digital soul of a crime. Justice never forgets, and the light will always find its way through the dark.